Common Sense Cafe. We're the mouth of the South, the Southern Brethren. We're dispensing common sense to the dents. That's us.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right. So we're here tonight. We've got some, as usual, we've got some things we want to talk about. And we're not sure anybody wants to listen, but we've got some things we're going to talk about, whether they listen or not. So our agenda for the evening. So what are we going to be talking about?
Well, I know you're hot on the second topic. We're gonna start with this. We're gonna start with the first one. It's
a little more mellow topic.
Yeah, right. It can be. You can chill out to it. You know, it's kind of yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I got some statistics from the Bureau of Justice Statistics.
Okay.
Let's see what I got here. Well, I should have printed it a little bit bigger. Let's see. What I've got, it says, this is talking about the combined state and federal imprisonment from 2008 to 2018. So over a 10-year period there, up to 2018. It says in 2018, the combined state and federal imprisonment rate was the lowest since 1996.
So fewer people were incarcerated in that decade.
Yep.
Than any decade since 96.
96. The total imprisonment rate fell 15% over that time. Now here's some they break it down a little bit further. From 2008 to 2018, the imprisonment rate dropped 28% for Black residents. 28%. For Hispanics, dropped 21%. And for whites, it dropped only 13% over that period of time. So the imprisonment rate for those groups dropped 28%.
The Hispanic was 21%.
21 for Hispanic, 28 for Black, 13% for whites. Says in 2018, the imprisonment rate of Black residents was the lowest since 1989.
Wow.
1989. Huh. So, what do you think about that? What caused it? Everybody just got good and all of a sudden.
Yeah. We had this great
committing crime, huh?
Well, I think there's multi-level to. I don't think there's just one answer. I think first of all, there may be a couple of general answers, but then I think there's some specific answers to the racial aspect or ethnic aspect of it going down. And for instance, let's take the Hispanic drops 21%. I think some of that has to do with the fact that we moved away from incarcerating illegal aliens. You know, people that came across illegally. We moved away from that. As a matter of fact,
with it right there, yeah.
Do what?
Yeah, that had to be something to do with it.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there for a while, I know under the Obama administration, if I'm not mistaken. I certainly had to research this, and I wouldn't want to misspeak, but I'll give you what I think I know. They would only be so when they were captured or caught coming into the country illegally, they were only held captive if they had broken a law in the United States prior to their capture. In other words, they had been deported once before and they came back and they had, or if they were wanted in another country. Other than that, they saw they may have been held for 3 days and then they were turned loose. And so the incarceration rate drops tremendously when you don't enforce the law.
Yeah.
I mean, the letter of the law anyway. So I think it's one thing that happened.
Yeah, but now I'm not sure, but I don't think that when they I may be wrong about this. I was wondering, when they capture people at the border, crossing the border illegally, is that an arrest? I don't know.
Boy, whether
That's
it's an
something to check
official
into.
arrest or not, I don't know. I
But
know
they
that when they
certainly,
raid places where people are working and everything, they
right,
arrest them. But I think
right.
that has more to do with them using false social security numbers and everything.
Yeah.
So,
But
um,
certainly during the Obama years, at least, there was particularly in Democratic states, there was a release program,
in the
And
last 4 years, I mean,
yeah,
in the first 4 years, he ran on a ticket that was based off of a hard line on illegal immigration. So, um, but another issue is that um, it's the prohibition all over again. So we come up with this great idea of prohibition. Prohibition was of course, the great social experiment of outlawing all alcohol use, and the speakeasies popped up, the underground alcohol. They say that the Kennedy's grandfather or somebody made a fortune running bootleg whiskey and everything back then. But what happened is people drank anyway, and they eventually came to the idea that there was no social stigma to it, and the risks were very minimal. And so they once again, and they were losing a lot of tax revenue. Once again, they went back to making alcohol legal. I think we did the same thing with marijuana, and so now, and to some extent, some other drugs too, but marijuana in particular, we have kind of decriminalized marijuana to the point to where you have to have a pretty good amount of marijuana on you before you're going to serve any real time, even before you're arrested. Even meth and some of the other drugs now, if you have less than a certain amount, what they consider private use, most of the time, in some states, you can get a ticket like you were getting a traffic citation,
right,
and,
right.
and and that's it. So I think that has a lot to do with the incarceration rate too.
hmm
What do you
So,
think?
so now we have to be careful here. So, are we saying that more blacks smoke pot than whites, and more
No,
Hispanic?
I think what we find there is that um, the community in which they exist, um, a lot of these inner city communities that happen to be black communities, and that's not it's not a negative. It's not those communities became predominantly black communities back when um, really after the Civil War, when a lot of the blacks began to go into manufacturing and they lived close to the factories, and that's how those communities became that way. And then when the factories moved out, it left them impoverished, and drugs is a way to make money. So I think that it does relate somewhat, drug trade and everything, and criminal activity and drug activity, marijuana, and all that. I do think it has an impact on the black community.
Yeah,
If you legalize drunk driving, it would have probably a greater impact on the white community
you're
than it
probably
would the
right.
black community. So it's not a racist thing. It's a reality. So I do think it affects.
I think you're
But
right.
I don't think I'm not saying they smoke more weed than anybody else. I I got some redneck friends that would probably give them a run for the money.
Well, okay. So let me give you another. I think we have 14 states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 states that totally legalized marijuana.
recreationally and
and
municipal.
municipal, everything, just
Okay.
any way it goes. But then,
Well,
and you only have you have 11 states that it's totally illegal. No municipal, no
hmm.
uh, party drug, but
Yeah, no
it's just
recreational.
completely
So,
illegal. So all the others are just in between that. Mostly they allow municipal marijuana. So what's your thoughts on that? Should we, is it time to legalize marijuana?
boy, I can tell you morally, I would say no, because I would think that anything that alters state of consciousness is a bad thing if it's not regulated. Socially, economically, I think there's revenue to be made by the local, state, and federal government off of the sale of marijuana. Every drug that we have, that these illegal opium and heroin and all of these illegal drugs, um, a lot of them began, some of them began um, like cocaine, I think in South America years and years ago, I think maybe 17, 1800s, the workers, they're hauling tobacco or whatever, they would um, have to have these long, I mean, they're toting this stuff on their back, they're walking up the hill, they're walking down to the port or whatever, and they would pull off a cocoa leaf and start chewing on it, not like a chocolate, but cocaine, where cocaine comes from, and chew on it, and it would give them energy throughout the day. Well, of course, they're absorbing cocaine. That then became, something to an abuse. And then scientists got a hold of it, was able to synthesize it, and it becomes a drug that we're able to use in a very profitable and a very effective way. I think marijuana could be used in a very productive and uh, healthy way, but I don't. I just can't get behind the decriminalizing the recreational use of marijuana. I just can't.
Now you mentioned the finances. Let me
Yeah.
quote you a couple things here. And this again, I think is from the Bureau of Justice. Where did I get this? I'll have to come back to you where I got it, but somebody wants it, they can email us. I'll send them,
That's
I'll
right.
send them the address where I got
That's
it.
the message. We'll get
Yeah.
you info.
It's talking about the fiscal reasons. It says marijuana is one of America's top selling agricultural products. According to the Colorado Department of Revenue, combined 4-year sales of marijuana for the state since it legalized cannabis in 2014 has now topped $7.6 billion. But it gets better than that. It says, let me get down
Now,
here.
what state is this?
This Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
Uh, Here it says if marijuana were legalized and regulated, the industry could generate up to 106 billion annually for local, state, and federal governments. Some estimates say that the government spends 29 billion on drug prohibition alone, but that's not just marijuana.
Right. Yeah.
And so a portion of that, well, I don't know that we could even save any money because you're going to put the resources that you put towards marijuana, you're going to put towards these other drugs at that point. But it could possibly bring in $106 billion in taxes for local, state, and federal government. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I think about that the way I think about uh, casinos. So the lottery. Okay, so somewhere along the line we had this great idea that if we would legalize gambling, we would make so much revenue off that we could fix our roads, we could have a better educational system, all of this kind of stuff, and what of course we'll fix poverty, and And so the Mississippi River on our home state, Mississippi, for a while was littered down through the river at every port city. Um, they had these casinos. Well, it done tremendous. I mean, it lifted the entire state out of poverty. We can see that. They were 50th and now they're 49th or something like that. So the reality behind the numbers, I just don't believe is there. And here's why. To regulate these things, and I'm not saying we shouldn't with marijuana, but I'm just saying I don't think the financial benefit is as real as they're trying to make it out to be, because you still have to regulate it. There's paper pushers you've got to pay to write regulations. There's paper pushers that you have to pay to enforce, or people you have to pay to enforce it. Then when there, inspectors go out, then when there's a violation, you have the court process that costs you.
So it'd create more jobs.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, we might get a handful of jobs out of it. But seriously, I just don't. Every 2 or 3 decades we come up with these great plans, and
what about the
alcohol is a great tax resource, but think about what all we have to do. What is it? About 15 to 20,000 people die each year in automobile accidents caused by alcohol. For instance, I've got a friend. We were on the scene of a car accident. Kim and I and her mom. We were the one car in front of all of it happened. A drunk driver hit this car at 71 miles an hour. Their little boy was in the back seat, had a head trauma. He has a TBI, and now there's a couple of $1 million worth of medical that was out there that somebody had to take care of.
But the argument there is that people who are smoking pot are already driving.
Yeah, right.
And then
it doesn't hurt them to make some of them a better driver.
It might help me from time to time. My kids say.
I think there are some good uses for marijuana.
Now, when it comes to casinos, you might hear the argument that casinos brought gambling to those towns and to those areas, to whereas marijuana, the participation is already there.
Yeah, and that's true. I agree. I think gambling expanded whenever we legalized it. I don't necessarily believe that marijuana is going to expand exponentially if we legalize it.
Here's an arrest statistic we were talking about a while ago. An arrest statistic about marijuana. It says that marijuana, this was in 2018, marijuana accounted for 3.3% of sales, manufacturing, drug, crime, arrest. Okay, so the arrest for selling, manufacturing of marijuana only accounted for 3% of all sales and manufacturing, drug, crime, arrest. Only 3%. But here's the catch, or the kicker. 36.8% of possession arrests were for marijuana. So we're filling up our prisons and our jails for those who are possessing it rather than those who are selling it.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the adjustments that have been made that have brought these incarceration statistics down, is that they no longer make those consumption arrests, those where you've got it for private use. But if you're manufacturing, or if you've got enough to be really selling it on the street, I think they're still making those arrests. But I think it's I suppose in my opinion, there's some makes good sense that don't keep throwing good money after bad. But
Yeah, I'm not I'm not sure where I stand on it. I'm leaning more towards legalizing it now than I used to be. Not for a moral issue at all, but not for
Right,
Christian beliefs at all. But I don't think it's the fight of abortion that we need to go. It's not
right.
that kind of fight we need to fight.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, and I think I would rather see our government put more money and effort towards crack cocaine, methamphetamines, and
Yeah,
busting that up.
and the opioid crisis that we have right now with
Opioid, yeah.
prescription
I'm,
drugs and opioid
those are
addiction.
those ruin lives so much more than pot does.
Absolutely. For years they said it was a gateway drug, and certainly it is. The difference is we now, what we find now is there's a lot of um, the people from the 60s and 70s who smoked marijuana and maybe done some other stuff back then have moved away from all of the harder stuff, but they still hold on to the marijuana. And so we're seeing a lot of consumption by older, the generation like our generation. So
Well, we got to get on to the next topic because you're very excited
absolutely.
about it. But I wanted to say that I really don't believe that these people that smoke pot are out driving and running into people and committing crimes. They're all at home, 30 and 40 years old, sleeping on their mama's couch downstairs. Still
Eating
chilling out,
Doritos.
eating Doritos and playing PlayStation.
Yeah, you're probably
They're just
right.
chilling.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, next subject. You want to take that and introduce it and
Man, I tell you,
get us started?
this stuck in my craw. This this is my soapbox here. So in June in Seattle, Washington, there was of course the riots and so forth, and so there is um, a group of people who got together and decided that they were going to set up an autonomous area. An autonomous zone is basically an area that's not governed by any state or federal or any other government. It's self-governed, and there's really no leadership. So they go in and they take over the Capitol Hill neighborhood district, and they establish this some call it CHOP, but it's best known as CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. So I have a huge problem with this. So they move in.
No way.
They move into this area, and in the beginning it was like a 6 city block area in this large park. And so I suppose the problem I have with it is I have this great sense of equality and justice about me that says if you let one person do it, you have to let them all do it. And so they have this autonomous zone set up, and it becomes where what they done was they pushed back against the police and everything. So the governor, or the not the governor, but the
Mayor.
Mayor Jenny Durkin, and I may be pronouncing her name wrong, but so she pulled back the National Guard, the police department, and in early June, and she suspended the use of tear gas. She canceled the curfew. She drew back the National Guard. She pledged no penalty for those who were arrested for protesting or previously violating the curfew. So when she did this and she pulled back, these people said, we own this now. This is an autonomous zone. And so they came up with all kind of stuff. One was a no cop co-op. So you could go there and you could get food or whatever and everything. And so this mayor decides we're going to let them have their autonomous zone.
And they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's completely illegal. So they're taking over property that belongs to individuals, to the city, and to the state.
Mhm.
And they're taking this and they're saying
Obama would say, you didn't build that. He tells them, you can't stay here. You didn't build that road.
Yeah, there you go. I tell you though, what kind of, I mean, in whose imagination could you have ever thought that that some governmental official would agree to an autonomous zone in the center of Seattle, Washington?
Yeah, it's really a secession from the government. They were
Absolutely.
seceding
It's
from
the
the United
exact
States.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing that the Civil War was fought over. The right to succeed, the right to have an autonomous government rule a particular area. And of course,
But they had no government,
no government.
no organization. They didn't own anything.
Yep.
Uh, when we seceded from the British, we owned land.
Yeah, right.
We had built a life here. Not say we, our ancestors, our forefathers, they built a life here. They organized the government. They had a common agenda, and then they seceded for reasons that were they felt worthy.
Yeah, right. And
Did any of this happen with this autonomous zone?
No. Here's what brought them together. The zone was a self-organizing space without official leadership. The protesters united under three main demands: cut Seattle's $409 million police budget by 50%. Let's see, shift that funding to the community program and services in historically black communities, and ensure the protesters would not be charged with crimes. That's it. That was what they were under. They accomplished a lot though. Like I said, they painted a full city block Black Lives Matter mural.
Yeah.
So I mean, things were moving. They created a no cop co-op where you could go and get lettuce and tomatoes, and they had they played movies out in the park. They had poetry readings, all of this stuff.
Utopia.
Yeah, and they took this by force. These are armed men and women. This is not, Now here's my problem. In 1993, I believe it was, and I'm not defending this religious cult. I'm not defending them. I'm not saying that their religion was not harmful or anything, but it's a good analogy. 1993, David Koresh has 200 something followers, I believe. I can't remember how many it was. They're locked up in a confine in Waco. It is believed that they are acquiring an illegal amount of weaponry. Okay, that's what's claimed. And so
we'll have to look into that. What is an illegal amount of?
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't specify. What the actual amount was, or
that'd be for some other time. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so in 93, the FBI and the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm,
mm-hmm.
They go in and want to serve a arrest warrant, a couple of arrest warrants, and a search warrant. And but here's how they do it. They go in this military garb and everything, and they up on the roof and all of this kind of stuff. And when Koresh and them saw this, they took a defensive posture. So
right.
Eventually on television, we see the National Guard plowing through their compound in a tank.
Mhm.
They used tear gas, they used fire, all kinds of different things that they used. Here's my point. They did this on property legally owned by David Koresh and his group.
Yeah.
They did this on property where women and children, I'm talking about little children, existed, knowing that they were putting their lives in danger. David Koresh went to town a few times a week. They could have arrested him in town. This was a push by the federal government. And guess who the sitting president was? President Bill Clinton.
Mm.
So I have a problem with this, all of a sudden, this autonomous zone popping up. I want to put an autonomous zone out at my farm. Govern myself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had. I looked at there's quite a few cases of. Sometimes we think we're the only ones who've ever seceded. We had
Right.
Civil War, and the South's the only ones. Long before the United States came along, I mean, this was happening. But even afterwards, I mean, like the Soviet Union, the Soviet states seceded from the Soviet Union.
Absolutely.
India seceded from British control.
Right. Yep.
And Pakistan seceded from India.
So, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, we got the Brexit going on, but here's my complaint or my thought about it is, and why it failed, and why, number one, they didn't have a joint reason. These reasons that they gave, or the demands that they gave, that was thought up by a few of them. There was a lot of loafers out there. They call loafers people that are just in a group just to loaf and just be a part of the group. They're not committing any or they're not giving anything to the group as far as helping work, helping supply. For number one, to secede from a government, you got to be able to self-sustain. You got to be able to sustain yourself.
That's right.
You can't say, I don't want to be part of the United States anymore, but United States, bring me all my food and bring me my housing and provide all these things for me, even though I'm separating myself from you. So they were not self-sustained. They depended on the charity of other groups bringing them food and all.
Well, there was capitalism too, because there was one guy selling hot dogs for $6. So they had.
Yeah, there you go.
And you paid for it with a U.S. dollar bill.
Oh, he's an entrepreneur. They had no government structure set up, and they had the only same objective they had was hate.
That's right.
They did. And that is not when you build a group around hate. Sooner or later, that falls apart because people quit hating. That's just not enough to keep a group cohesive.
Yeah, when you talked about this, when we succeeded from Great Britain, we not only we had been oppressed by Great Britain. We had taxation without representation. There was an oppression. Now, some people will say, well, those people were oppressed because of systematic racism and police brutality. And I would challenge that, because I would say if those people had been systematically attacked, they wouldn't be out there. They would be incarcerated or dead, because that's the whole complaint. They wouldn't have had the freedom to be out there. So there's no oppression in the 6-city block here. This is a neighborhood, and they've not been oppressed there. So their legal, what I would consider legal and moral, right to create an autonomous zone doesn't exist.
Right. And there's such a difference between, they take protests today and they go beyond the limits of protest, with the looting and the rioting and then the autonomous zone. But, we live in a republic that is a representation of the majority.
Right.
In any government, you cannot let, and Africa, South Africa was a good demonstration of this, which where the majority finally took over. But in our nation and in most places, in our nation, the majority rules.
Yes.
The majority picks the president, the majority picks the government, and the majority makes the laws. If the South was the majority during the Civil War, they would have won. And we'd be living in a terrible, terrible state of slavery still today.
Yes.
But the majority won out. And today we are allowing the minority, I'm not talking about blacks being a minority, Asians being a minority, or Hispanics. I'm talking about a small group of radicals who really don't have the same objective in mind. The only common thing they have in mind is that they all hate Republicans, particularly Trump. So they aren't cohesive in any way towards that. But at any point, whether it's Seattle, whether it's a city, whether it's a state, or whether it's our nation, if we start allowing the minority to rule, you go from a minority to a smaller minority to eventually a dictator.
Yeah,
same thing socialists and communists do is they take you into dictatorship.
An argument that people are going to, no doubt bring up is that the true minority that's ruling the country is the 1%ers, the religious elite. And to some degree, I can see that there is a great influence by that 1%.
They have a strong influence, but
however, we see that even they begin to buckle and cower to these people out on the street aren't 1%ers. These that are creating autonomous zones or who are rioting to the point to where they break the law and then demand that there be no penalty for it. They're just a radical group of people, and we have radicals on both sides. We have the extreme right, we have the extreme left. When we're talking about extreme right, we're not talking about extreme conservatism. We're talking about people with extreme mentalities about social issues. Because I'm extremely conservative. I believe in small government. I believe in fiscal responsibility, all of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's I could never have dreamed in all of my life that there would be some mayor who would say that an autonomous zone existing in a 6-block area of my city plus this city park. That is what did she say? It is the don't be afraid of democracy. She claimed that was democracy. And if that's democracy, then democracy equals chaos. Go to the thesaurus and they have to cross over the borders of each other. So
let me ask you, now, if those people were thought to be, if we, as a nation, empathize with them, or if we were compassionate towards them, and we saw that, they're just disturbed people. They're not normal, or they're not. I hate to say that, but they're not. They're just disturbed people, even though their objective is wrong, even though they're going about it the wrong way. They're just disturbed people. Why don't we just let them do it?
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with that.
I probably so. Here's the problem with that is that we have had a policy in place for the homeless community, and here the homeless community is most of the time not most of the time, a lot of times it's people who have serious mental or social issues.
Exactly, yes.
And they go and they set up a camp. And for the most part, these people stay to themselves. And they don't do it downtown city blocks and block off traffic and tell the cops not to come in and all that. they pick an out of the way place. They don't want to be bothered. They want to live and let live, and they find this out of the way place. And I think about Des Moines, and ironically, the governor's mansion is on the river, and right at the bottom of the governor's mansion on that river, there's always, it seems to be a little homeless camp there. And the authorities come in and run them out. They won't allow them to stay, and they move to some other area, and then they come in and run them out. And so I mean, if these people in Seattle, if we looked at them that way, we would have to look at every homeless camp
Right.
and every.
What about these homeless camps, though, in California particularly? Most states don't allow, or most cities, most states, most governments do not allow them to set up permanent, or what you would consider permanent residents on the streets. And
Right,
California has just given over to them. Now, a lot of them are, like you said, mentally disturbed, maybe down on their luck. Life's been rough. Some are people that just wanted that lifestyle and they moved out there afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Drugs and
And
alcohol
they're
play a
there
part
to
in
enjoy the
homelessness.
drug. What's that?
Drug and alcohol play
Yeah.
a role in
Yeah.
homelessness as well.
So why would we allow that minority group to dictate and overrule the majority? Do you
Yeah.
think the majority of people that live in that city want those homeless people living on the streets?
No, absolutely.
And we have programs, just like you said, we have programs for homeless people. We have assistance. I mean,
Some of them.
you can get a check pretty easy if you're.
Yeah. Well, it's the same. It's the same issue though. A lot of people in the homeless community, like you said, and these people who in the autonomous zone, it was the exact same thing. They don't want to be governed. That's the whole thing. Most of them don't want an 8 to 5 job, even if
That's
you
right.
gave them one. There was a federal initiative called Housing First that they done poured a whole lot of money into during the Obama administration. And I worked in the worked with homeless veterans and drug and alcohol and homelessness throughout our community. And I can tell you that you can take a guy off of the street and put him in an apartment, but eventually, I mean, he might enjoy that during the winter, or he might enjoy it for a while during the hot summer, but eventually, when it comes his turn to pay the rent, when it's his turn to pay the light bill, when it's his turn to buy all the groceries, he really don't want to live that way, and he goes back out to the streets.
Right.
So some of it is just that we used to liken it to the old mountain men mentality. They'd go up on the mountain, they'd live, trap, whatever, come down, trade, and go back, and that's about the way a lot of the homeless did. And we'll get people that's going to disagree and say that homelessness is, has to do with the economy or poverty or whatever. But the truth of the matter is that there are several segments to the homeless community, to the homeless population, and one of them is the ones that we're describing.
Yeah.
And if we let any of them do it, we have to let them all do it.
Yeah.
So.
And by all means, it's a sad thing that the mental illness that some of these people have, and the people that have just been down on their luck. But these people in California didn't just come out of somebody's backyard there in California and start camping on the streets. They came from other areas of the country out there, brought their families. There's kids living out there, families living out. And it's like you said, they just want to, it's like they want to escape reality and get out there where they don't have to listen to anybody.
That's right. We Hope in Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines is known in the homeless population as Iowa in general as an area where they offer a lot of good services. And we would have people come up from Arizona, from Chicago, from Kansas City, from all around. We would have people come to Des Moines, and we would begin to ask them, why are you here? Well, you got good services here. You can get free food. You get places to stay when it's super cold, and a lot of programs like that. And so, you find a place that's going, like California, that says, hey, we're going to give you this area, and you can pitch a tent, you can whatever. They're going to come.
Drugs.
Yeah, right. We're not going to come in there and mess with you.
No.
So I don't know, but I just think that I never in all of my years, never in all of the time that I have had rational thought would I have ever believed that some mayor of a large city would declare that people taking over 6 full city blocks plus the park would be considered an act of democracy. Oh. That's just, there's no common sense in that.
No common sense. Oh, there's a few mayors out there right now that don't have common sense, I tell you. Oh,
we need to send them this video. We got to get some. It's like I said. It's we're providing common sense for the extremely dense. So.
That woman they call mayor up in Chicago, man, she is way out there. I think she went to Mars and studied for a while or something.
Yeah, she's got some issues.
Way out there. Well, we need to wrap this up. Some good discussion tonight.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody will agree with everything we said.
Yeah. We're going to get fan letters and hate mail, and oh man, I can't wait to read my first piece of hate mail. That's my goal. I want.
That's right, man. Hey, if you're a liberal out there and you just tuned in to catch our show tonight, hey, stay with us. Let us upset you.
Yes.
To the point, if you can verbalize, write us letters, write us emails, post on our whatever sites we have out there, and
and if we haven't offended you yet, just hang in there.
Hang in.
It's our goal in life to
stay with us, man.
Common sense for the extremely dense,
Well, if I go through a day without offending somebody, I feel like I hadn't lived.
Yeah. What's the purpose? And I tell you what, though, the Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpens another. We got to get, some real stuff out there.
We're trying to sharpen people, aren't we?
That's right. We're the sharpeners.
Right. Well, take us out.
All right. Hey, I'm Jeff.